Hey everybody, welcome back to Nuxt channel, and today we're looking into file system based routing, but also type-safe, and not only in Nuxt, but also in your Vue project. Here we go. Yes, you heard it correctly. We talk about file system based routing, and if you wonder, wait, is it only available in Nuxt? Then no, it's not. And also the type safety, which isn't there by default anywhere. So let's see how we can add file system based and type safe routes to our Vue application. But before that, let's hear from our sponsor. Japan is an amazing country. I've been there last year for VueFest, and 10 days are simply not enough. I am looking so forward to go back. And if you're interested to actually launch or advance your career as a software developer, either full stack or front end in Tokyo, well, then you can take that chance through Henge. Henge is a top B2B cloud security company, and they are offering a fully subsidized global internship program in Tokyo, the capital of Japan. Their official language is English, and you can spend 4 to 6 weeks getting hands-on experience with the cloud technologies, and of course also doing front-end development with Vue.js, the framework we all love so much. In addition to that, you learn soft skills and also give technical talks and presentations, which is always a valuable skill, speaking from experience there. The best part is, as said before, it's fully subsidized in terms of flights, meals, and also accommodation. So in addition to the skills you learn, you will experience Japan and the culture there. Ready to apply? Then solve the coding challenge, link below in the description, also shown on screen, and submit your cover letter and CV, and then select the time that would suit for your internship. So what are you waiting for? Let's go, and then let's continue with the video. To get started, of course, we use a minimal Vue application just coming out of npm create Vue. The only thing we've ticked was using the router because, well, we want to talk about type-safe route and file system-based routing. And of course, we use TypeScript everywhere, as we see on the .ts ending. So in the browser, we see roughly this. A very clear and easy starting page of the Vue 3 and read template. So far, so good. We even have routes, so when we click on About and Home, we switch, and if I show you the URL parameters here, we see this is actually working as expected. So we switch, we can refresh, sorry for the quick flash of white, and there we go. So far, so good. But none of this is actually type-safe or file system-based. If we take a look at the router index.ts that's created automatically, we see, all right, we have the routes here. They are clearly defined, so it's not file system-based, so they're not inferred. We have the views where the home view and the code splitted or lazily loaded about view is in there. So we want to change it, of course. And on the main TS, we use the router and we're good to go. So the big question is, how? How do we change that? And the answer is unplugin Vue router. Unplugin Vue router is maintained by Eduardo, who is also maintaining Pina and the Vue router. Also, don't forget to start if you're around here as well. It's very important to note this while this package is still on version 0.12.0 at the time of recording and is declared as experimental, the actual typed routing and file-based routing is fundamentally stable. There are other experimental APIs, for example data loaders, but that's for another video. So first things first, we want to install unplugin Vue router, and we could install this as dependency or as dev dependency. It doesn't matter too much in our case, so we can get going with this. Next, we go into our Vite config, and I'll close this terminal here, and we want to add the Vue router plugin to our Vite config. But it is very important that you add the whole thing before you actually add the Vue plugin. So the order of imports is actually not that important, but it has to be the case that the Vue router is registered before the Vue plugin in our wonderful Vite config. And we get that from /Vite because unplugin Vue router is, as the name says, an unplugin, which means it can be used with rollup, webpack, rolldown, Vite, and ES build, and whatsoever actually. That means even with the Vue CLI, if you're still using that for whatever reason. All right, and now we want to start the dev server or start it again, and we will see this typed router DTS generated here. So here, this is a generated file that actually includes all the information regarding our typed router. So what we want to do next, if you're using TypeScript, and I mean you should because, well, that's the benefit of type safety, we go to our TS config and we want to make sure that this is actually including our typed router DTS. Now, to get the full type support, you have to do a few changes to your configuration files, but these are pretty straightforward. The first thing is going into your tsconfig.app.json, if you have that Vite template, or your tsconfig.json otherwise. And in this include, you want to add the typed router. that we had before, because obviously this typed router DTS file that includes all the information once generated should be included in your TS config so the types can be inferred. Wonderful. But that's not necessarily all. We also want to set the module resolution to the modern bundler option, if that's not already the default for your case. So changing that should be helpful as well. It's the recommended setting anyway, so, well, we use a bundler in the application, so you should go for it. Also, in Vue, you should only change it for app.json. You don't need to change it in your tsconfig or tsconfig.node as mentioned before. And now one more TypeScript-related thing. Here you should go to your entity.ts and set up a reference if you have an entity.ts. So usually there are the Vue client types here, and you add the unplugin Vue router client types here. So the same idea, we want to register them as global, so you don't need to set anything around there and import stuff. And we're good to go. In case you don't have them, you don't have an entity.ts file, you just go in your TypeScript config and in the compiler options. So for example, here, the compiler options, you can add another types setting and that array, you can put the same thing in there. But if you're using Vue, then an entity.ts is quite common. So you should be good to go. And if you take a look at the browser now, then, well, things just work. The test server is still running, so that's fine. But we still don't have any typed routes in our code. So let's change it and migrate our simple template over there. And to do this, we start pretty simple. We have our views here in the About view and Home view, and we just rename the whole thing over to pages. This is just by convention. And then we don't need the view prefix, so we name them as the URL will be about, and home shouldn't be home, but it should be index, as classic HTML conventions should be. Now, if you go to our router.index.ts, we get some errors because there is no home view anymore. We changed the names, right? And also the lazy loaded import is not there. But it's fine. Actually, we can get rid of the whole routes array because these should be auto-generated now. But we have to get them from somewhere. So we need to get the routes. And where did I get it from? Well, we get the routes and also something else in a bit from the Vue router itself, but the auto routes export. And this is a new export that the unplugin Vue router actually adds there. And it's a more or less virtual one because if you click here, we can see, okay, we have the types here and things are defined. And we have this route name map, right? Here we have a few more definitions and so on and so on. But if you remember that route name map, that was also in our typed router over here. So this is basically referencing to it. And now if we save this, we want to do one more thing. We want to also make sure that hot module reload works. So we have to add the handle hot update over here. And then we say, if import.meta.hot, so if hot module reload is actually a thing in dev mode, then please handle hot update for the router itself. So if routes change and so on and so on. And if we now take a look into our typed router.d.ts down here, well, or here, we see, oh yeah, that route name map here. It's an override of the existing thing from the auto routes as we've seen here. So, and it includes the slash and slash about. So we should kind of get type support now. Let's look if that's true. And to do so, we can just go to our app.view, I suppose, and just take this to field here and write an empty string. And we see, yes, that's correct. We see slash and slash about based on our wonderful file system based routing. And if we add another one, let's say test.view, we just create a new view component real quick and put an h1 with test in here. And we go back to the app.view, then we should see the same effect. If we move the slash here, then yes, test is right there again. And actually you can do the same thing if you create like, let's say users name.view. So like you have a dynamic param, you create a view component real quick and then rewrite username $out.params.name just to make it quick. And then let's just go to slash users slash name. There we go. So users ABC. And if we now go to user ABC in the browser, let's see what will happen. And here we click user ABC and see username ABC. But wait, now you might be wondering, there was a TypeScript error in the template of that component, of the page component. Shouldn't it be type safe? And the answer is yes, it should be, but it's a bit different. For that, let's just say we use the route, so we can write use route here. But instead, we take the param here as the user name. So now we know in which route we are. And now we can just say, for example, route.params.name. And we know exactly now that this will exist. The best part is you can even have partials. So you can have u_name. And then, of course, you have to fix the types here. That works fine. In the app, we also changed it u_abc, and we see also that it has an effect there too. And if we now click once again in our browser, from home over to user ABC, that works, and the URL is correct. Users uabc. All right, so we got file system-based routing working in your Vue application, and the routes are also type safe. So you can run your Vue.TSC or similar and will catch some issues before deploying, which is quite helpful, of course. But if you're a Nuxt user now, you might wonder, where can I do it in Nuxt.js? And what was first, Nuxt or the unplugin Vue router? Well, the answer is Nuxt was there first, and there was also a Vue plugin called Vue plugin Pages. But now Eduardo incorporated some file system-based routing based on previous implementations, including Nuxt, to also align with that as much as possible, of course. And actually, Nuxt is now using unplugin Vue router under the hood for its type pages option. But you have to enable it. And you can enable it through your Nuxt config by just using experimental type pages true. It is still under experimental because of the same reasons that Eduardo mentioned before, because the unplugin Vue router itself is already an experimental. And while the file system and type-based routing, they're fine, they work, type safety looks good, still things could change, and that's why it's under experimental in Nuxt 3 and subsequent releases as well until the unplugin Vue router gets stabilized. And now I wonder, did you knew that before? Do you maybe want to introduce some type safety in your Vue application? Luckily, there are a lot of configuration options, so you don't have to worry about, oh, what if the folder name is views and not pages? You can configure all of that and more. You can even extend routes. You can do a lot of good things. And if you're using auto imports, no worries. Eduardo also thought about that. And you have these Vue router auto imports that you can use for auto imports, and they're also automatically generated. And that's it, a basic overview. So it's time for you now to implement your type safety and file system-based routing in your Vue application. That's, by the way, also a great option if you at some point want to switch to Nuxt, because it aligns pretty closely. So go ahead and do that. Also, thank you so much to Henge for sponsoring this video. Definitely check them out. Link down below in the video description as usual. And also drop any questions and comments down below. I'll go through them all. See you in the next video or around the channel. Happy hacking.